In this lesson, we're going to be going over recursion, what it is, and how we can use it. And to get started, we can just go over the concept of recursion. So you might be familiar with putting a mirror in front of another mirror. You're going to get caught in this infinite loop because you keep on looking at one mirror that looks at the other mirror and so on. Recursion is very similar to this concept. So to get started, we're going to create a function called simple recursion for our first example. And it's going to take a number as an argument. Now, if the number is less than 2000, then we want to print the number, and we also want to call the same function that we just created, and we're going to take the number and multiply it by 2. So as you can see, right now it's going to go in an infinite loop, because as long as the number is less than 2000, it's going to call itself once again, but I also provided a condition, so each time it does the loop, it's going to increment the number by 2. So it's very similar to a while loop, and I will later talk a bit about that as well, but we also need to provide an else block, which is going to say print, and recursion has ended. So as soon as we run this program, we're going to get nothing because I forgot to call it. So we're going to call it, we're going to insert the number of 2, and as soon as we run this program, you're going to notice in your console that we're going to get 2, 4, 8, 16, all the way to 1024. But as soon as we multiply this by 2, this number is going to be more than 2000, so it's going to go to the else statement and it's going to finish this recursion. So the concept of recursion is just calling a function inside the same function. And of course, what we did here can easily also be done in a while loop. It's just good to know the concept of recursion because back in the day, this was very, very important. And it still is for a lot of the older programming languages. Newer programming languages don't really require this anymore, but back in the day, it was the only way to do this. But let's go over an example that's a bit more realistic. So for this example, we actually have to go ahead and import from time. We have to import sleep. And I will talk about imports in a future video, but for now just copy what you see, and we have to create a variable that is initialized with the value of 0. Now we can go ahead and create a function that's called connect to internet. And since we are in a function, we have to use the global keyword to refer to this one over here and type in attempts. And again, I'm going to also talk about the global keyword in a future video, so do not worry about that. It's just for the sake of this example that I'm using all of this already. So now inside here, we can go ahead and type in if attempts is less than 3, then we are going to increment the attempts by 1, and we are going to print trying to connect, comma, attempts. Then we are going to simulate that the computer is thinking by adding a sleep function, and this is just going to pause our program for 2 seconds. Then we're going to go ahead and print connection failed, trying again. And we're going to provide a 1 second delay. And this is where we're going to use the recursion because we want the connection to try to connect to the internet again. So if something fails inside here, it's just going to call the same function and try to do the same thing it failed at again. And you can usually see this working in a lot of apps because apps are constantly trying to grab internet so that they can actually function, and sometimes they can't do it. And if they can't do it, the whole program is going to fail. So they need a sort of mechanism that repeats this process until they can actually find an internet connection and hang on to it. And that's a good example of where you could see recursion. And then we can simulate that the connection was established. So we'll just go ahead and print ellipses, sleep for 1 second. Then we can just go ahead and copy this and paste it under. And finally, we're going to print that we successfully connected to the internet. Now, all that's left for us is to go ahead and call this function connect to internet and run the program. So it's going to say trying to connect, it failed. So it's trying again and it failed again, and it's trying to connect one more time and it failed. And it connected to the internet. So that was a very good example of where you could use recursion in modern day development. There are plenty of other examples, but the concept is that you just call a function inside the same function, and Again, it's really like a mirror in front of another mirror. It's an infinite loop until you tell it to stop doing it. But in the next lesson, we're going to be going over this global keyword and discussing what scopes are.